Her weapons, a banjo, a goat, and an explosive personality that could light up a town. With those weapons, cousin Emmy, a woman born in a log cabin, didn't just fight in a man's world, she conquered it. She broke down the doors for generations of women who came after her, yet history nearly erased her name. Why? This is the story of the forgotten queen of American music, and the attempt to reclaim the legacy of a woman who refused to be defined by anyone. To truly grasp the phenomenon of Cousin Emmy, you have to transport yourself to an America that feels like a foreign country. Picture the first few decades of the 20th century, a nation caught in the turbulent transition from a rural agrarian past to an industrial, media-driven future. This was a time before television had atomized the family, before the internet had connected the globe. The most powerful forms of mass communication were the moving picture, and even more importantly, the crackling, magical voice of the radio. In the shadow of the Great Depression, families would gather around their radio sets as if they were a sacred hearth, the voices coming through the static offering a precious escape from a world of hardship. Simultaneously, a cultural gold rush was underway. Urban-based record labels and radio syndicates had discovered the rich, untapped veins of music running through the Appalachian Mountains. They called it hillbilly music, a term that was both a marketing category and a casual slur. They were fascinated by its raw emotion and untamed spirit, and they sent talent scouts fanning out across the country, looking for performers who embodied this romanticized rustic ideal. For a musician with talent and ambition, this was a moment of incredible opportunity, but it was also a treacherous landscape. The industry was a machine, ready to take your most authentic songs, package them for mass consumption, and often leave you with little more than fleeting fame and empty pockets. It was a world of immense promise and great danger, and a force of nature named Cynthia May Carver was about to walk right into the middle of it. She was born in a log cabin near Lamb, Kentucky on March 14, 1903. This wasn't a PR backstory. It was the reality of life in the Cumberland Mountains at the turn of the century. The Carver family didn't just play music. It was the very marrow in their bones. Her father, William, was a respected local fiddler. Her mother, Molly, played the banjo. Music was the language of their home, a constant presence that marked every celebration and soothed every sorrow. The Carvers were also part of a larger musical dynasty. Her cousins were the famed Carver Boys, who would go on to become popular recording artists in the 1920s. For young Cynthia, a musical instrument wasn't a toy. It was a tool for survival and an instrument of expression. She was, by all accounts, a prodigy of startling ability. In a world where formal lessons were an unimaginable luxury, she learned by watching, listening, and absorbing everything around her. She picked up the fiddle, the guitar, and, most fatefully, the 5-string banjo, with an almost supernatural ease. But she didn't just learn to replicate the tunes she heard. From the very beginning, she was an innovator. She attacked the instruments with a joyful ferocity, developing her own wild percussive banjo style, a whirlwind of rhythmic slaps, lightning-fast frailing, and a unique down-picking technique she would later call the whammy diddle. It was a sound that was uniquely hers, untamed, infectious, and utterly alive. Her childhood was defined by the harsh realities of sharecropping. The family was constantly on the move, chasing work from one farm to another across the Kentucky-Tennessee border. This itinerant life, while deeply unstable, provided Cynthia with an unparalleled musical education. At every stop, she was a sponge, soaking up the vast and varied repertoire of the region. Ancient British ballads that had crossed the ocean centuries earlier, fiery fiddle tunes for all-night dances, mournful blues melodies, and sentimental parlor songs. Her mind became a living archive of American folk music. This wasn't a hobby, it was a profession from an incredibly young age. By her early teens, she was already a seasoned performer, the charismatic heart of the family band, playing for pocket change at local dances, fairs, and medicine shows. It was a tough apprenticeship that taught her a crucial lesson. Talent alone wasn't enough. To hold the attention of a rowdy, exhausted, and often inebriated audience, you needed something more. You needed showmanship. You needed to be an entertainer. Her ambition was a fire that the small towns of Kentucky couldn't contain. She set her sights on the biggest stage available in the 1930s, live radio. After honing her craft at smaller stations like WHAS in Louisville, she aimed for the big time, KMOX in St. Louis, a 50,000-watt clear channel powerhouse whose signal blanketed the entire Midwest after sunset. The story of her audition has become a cornerstone of her legend, a perfect encapsulation of her audacious spirit. She didn't just walk in with her banjo. She arrived with her entire band, the Kinfolks, and, as the story goes, a goat on a leash. When the bewildered station managers asked about the farm animal, she supposedly deadpanned that she wanted to make sure she had at least one loyal fan in the audience. Whether every detail of the goat story is true is beside the point. It was a calculated act of theater, a piece of brilliant self-marketing. She understood instinctively that in the crowded marketplace of radio performers, she needed to be unforgettable. It was during this period that the transformation from Cynthia May Carver to Cousin Emmy was complete. The name was a stroke of marketing genius. Cousin instantly created a bond of familial warmth with her listeners. Emmy was simple, rustic, and memorable. She paired the name with an iconic look, bright homemade gingham dresses, her hair in pigtails, and a wide, infectious grin that could be felt even through the airwaves. She was selling an idea of Appalachia, a place not of poverty and hardship, but of unbridled joy and authentic spirit. The executives at KMOX were sold. Cousin Emmy and her kinfolks quickly became a sensation. Her show was unlike anything else on the air. It was a high-octane mix of music, vaudevillian comedy, and down-home wisdom. She wasn't a demure singer who stood politely at a microphone. She was a band leader, a comedian, a dancer, and a multi-instrumental virtuoso. She commanded the show with an iron will and an effervescent charm. Her energy was relentless, her joy was infectious, and her talent was undeniable. From St. Louis, her fame exploded across the country, and her joyous, patriotic sound would soon become a vital source of comfort for a nation heading into its darkest hour. The 1940s were her golden decade. She was a relentless touring artist, crisscrossing the nation in an era when the interstate highway system was still a dream. Life on the road was grueling and often dangerous, especially for a woman in charge. She was the boss, managing the bookings, handling the payroll, and leading a band of men. To protect herself and her earnings, she was known to carry a small pistol in her purse, a stark symbol of the self-reliance required to survive in that world. When World War II broke out, she threw her considerable energy into the war effort, becoming one of the most active performers on the USO circuit. She took her show to the front lines, entertaining troops in field hospitals and makeshift camps across the globe. She brought them a taste of home, a moment of laughter and music in the midst of unimaginable horror. Her patriotism was deep and genuine, and her performances were a vital boost to morale. After the war, her star continued to ascend. She landed a recording contract with Decca Records and even made her way to Hollywood, appearing in the 1944 Roy Acuff musical Swing in the Saddle and the 1945 film The Second Greatest Sex. But it was an encounter in 1947 that would secure her legacy not as a commercial star, but as a figure of monumental cultural importance. This was the moment she met Alan Lomax. Lomax, the legendary folklorist and musicologist, was on a mission for the Library of Congress to create a permanent record of America's folk traditions before they were homogenized by mass media. He had heard tales of this firecracker from Kentucky and sought her out, hoping to capture a piece of the authentic mountain music she represented. What he found astonished him. He saw past the gingham dresses and the stage persona and recognized her for what she was, a living encyclopedia of American folk music. In his field notes, Lomax's admiration is palpable. He described her as a volcano of a woman, a real creator, and the best banjo picker in the world. For several days, Lomax and his recording equipment became a fixture in her home. The sessions were revelatory. Freed from the time constraints and commercial pressures of her radio show, Emmy unleashed the full breadth of her knowledge. She sang him the old, dark, unaccompanied ballads she had learned as a child, songs whose roots stretched back centuries to the British Isles. She played blistering fiddle tunes and demonstrated her unique banjo techniques. She shared dozens of songs, including her own composition, a plaintive tune called Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man? The Alan Lomax recordings are a national treasure. They captured the soul of an artist and the spirit of a tradition. They immortalized Cynthia May Carver, ensuring that long after the radio shows faded and the stage lights dimmed, her voice would be preserved forever in the nation's most sacred cultural archive. To truly understand Cousin Emmy, you must look at the immense chasm between her public persona and the private reality of her life. The woman on stage was a force of nature, a whirlwind of joyous, almost cartoonish energy. The woman off stage was a shrewd, determined, and fiercely independent artist who navigated the treacherous waters of the entertainment business with a survivor's instinct. One of the most telling aspects of her character was her staggering multi-instrumentalism. This wasn't just a gimmick, it was a core part of her identity. While the banjo was her signature, her musical arsenal was vast and eccentric. She was a master fiddler and a solid rhythm guitarist. But her curiosity led her to master an array of bizarre and wonderful instruments. She played the handsaw, bending it to create eerie theremin-like melodies. She could coax tunes from a pair of inflated rubber gloves, slapping and squeezing them to create rhythmic notes. She played the nose flute, the French harp, and the dulcimer, a type of Appalachian zither. Her most famous invention was her custom banjo, whose head was made not from traditional calfskin, but from a stretched pig's bladder. She claimed this unconventional material gave the instrument a superior, funkier, and more resonant tone. This wasn't just an act, it was the mark of a relentless tinkerer and a true folk artist, using the materials at hand to create the sounds she heard in her head. This resourcefulness extended to her role as a businesswoman. Emmy was the CEO of her own traveling musical enterprise. She managed her band, the Kinfolks, with a firm hand. A teenage Grandpa Jones, who would later become a country music icon on the show Hee Haw, got his professional start playing in her band. He recalled her as a tough but fair leader who taught him everything about stagecraft and professionalism. She drilled into him the importance of giving every performance your all. Even if there's only one person in the audience, she told him, you give them the same show you'd give a full house. This wasn't just about art, it was about respecting the paying customer. She understood that her livelihood depended on her reputation as a can't-miss live act. She handled the money, negotiated the fees, and ensured her band was paid, a level of control that was extraordinary for a woman in that era. But this relentless drive came at a significant personal cost. The stability of a conventional home life was a constant casualty of her career. She was married at least twice, first to a man named Noble Carver and later to a performer named J.W. Lane. But her professional ambition always seemed to be the dominant force in her life. In an era that rigidly defined a woman's place as being in the home, she was a radical outlier, a career woman through and through. The constant travel, the loneliness of hotel rooms, and the pressure of being the main breadwinner surely took a toll. The joyous woman on stage was also a woman who made profound sacrifices, choosing a life on the road over the stability of a home. Her defiance was legendary. During her brief time in Hollywood, she clashed repeatedly with the rigid studio system. Accustomed to being her own boss, she bristled at being told how to perform by directors who knew nothing about her music or her audience. When one director tried to force her to sing a song in a way that felt inauthentic, she flatly refused. She knew what her fans wanted, and she would not compromise her artistic integrity for a Hollywood formula. This stubbornness likely cost her more film roles, but it was a price she was willing to pay. The joy in her music was real, but it was a joy forged in hardship, a testament to a spirit that refused to be broken by poverty, loneliness, or the condescension of a cynical industry. No artist's life is without its complexities, and Cousin Emmy's legacy is tangled in some of the most enduring debates in American music history. The first and most significant is the question of authenticity. Was the cheerful pigtail-wearing Cousin Emmy a genuine reflection of the woman from the Kentucky hills, or was she a carefully constructed caricature designed to appeal to a mainstream audience's romanticized notion of Appalachia? The truth is a complex tapestry. Cynthia Carver was undeniably a brilliant musician and a natural-born entertainer with a flamboyant personality. However, the Cousin Emmy persona amplified certain aspects of her identity while conveniently sanding down others. She leaned into the hillbilly stereotype because it was a marketable brand. Some purists at the time and some critics since have seen this as a betrayal of her folk roots, a commercialization of something sacred. This view, however, fails to appreciate the subversive genius of her strategy. As a woman in a male-dominated field, she used the stereotype as both a shield and a weapon. The seemingly harmless, non-threatening persona of a country cousin allowed her to take center stage, lead a band, and be the boss in a way that a more serious or conventional female performer of her time might never have been allowed. She was, in essence, playing a character in order to be her true self, a powerful, pioneering artist in complete control of her career. The second major point of contention revolves around songwriting, credit, and compensation, a story tragically common for artists of her generation. Her most famous composition, Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man?, is a perfect case study. Emmy wrote and performed the song for years, and her definitive version was captured by Alan Lomax in the 1940s. It was her creation, born of her experience and artistry. However, in 1956, the bluegrass duo the Osborne Brothers recorded a slick, high-energy version of the tune, retitled simply Ruby. It became a massive hit and a foundational anthem of the emerging bluegrass genre. The problem? The songwriting was credited to Sonny Osborne and Bobby Osborne. Emmy had to fight to get her name recognized as the song's originator. While she eventually received some recognition and a co-writing credit, It's highly debatable whether she was ever fully and fairly compensated for a song that has been recorded by countless artists and remains a cornerstone of the genre. This incident highlights the systemic exploitation that was rampant in the industry. It was a world where formal copyrights were often ignored and where a handshake deal or a publisher's slick maneuver could strip a creator of their life's work. It adds a layer of tragic irony to her story. A woman who was a master of her own business on the road could still fall victim to the predatory practices of the recording industry. So why, after all these years, does Cousin Emmy still matter? Why should we remember a banjo-playing woman from a bygone era? Her significance is immense, and it unfolds in layers. First and foremost, she was a trailblazer for women in music. She wasn't just a girl singer in a male-led band, which was the standard, often decorative role for women in country music at the time. She was the band leader. She was the star instrumentalist. She was the main attraction. She commanded the stage with a confidence and authority that was nothing short of revolutionary. Artists from Patsy Montana to Kitty Wells were her contemporaries. But Emmy's role as an instrumental virtuoso and band leader set her apart. Later generations of women, from Loretta Lynn and Dolly Parton to the female-led bands of today, walk through a door that Cousin Emmy had kicked open for them. Her second major contribution was her role as a vital bridge between different eras of American music. She was a living link between the old-time, pre-commercial folk traditions of Appalachia and the burgeoning commercial country music industry of Nashville. And then decades later, she became a hero to a new generation during the folk revival of the 1960s. Young urban musicians and activists like Pete Seeger and the new Lost City Ramblers, who were dedicated to rediscovering authentic American folk music, found a goldmine in Emmy's repertoire and her dynamic performance style. The new Lost City Ramblers, in particular, revered her, learning her songs directly from the Lomax recordings and performing them for a new audience, always giving her credit. Her appearance at the 1967 Newport Folk Festival was a triumphant, full-circle moment. Here she was, now in her 60s, standing on stage in front of a massive audience of young, long-haired folk fans, many of whom had only heard her on old, scratchy records. She proceeded to blow them away with the same volcanic energy she'd had for 40 years. The performance was a moment of profound validation, reintroducing her to a national audience and cementing her status as a vital and influential folk artist. It led to appearances on television shows like Pete Seeger's Rainbow Quest, where she could be seen, clear as day, demonstrating her incredible techniques for a new generation. Her influence, often uncredited, spread in surprising directions. It's reported that a young Janis Joplin saw one of her revival shows and was deeply impressed by Emmy's uninhibited, bluesy, and powerful vocal delivery. It's not hard to see the connection. The raw, gut-bucket emotion in Emmy's voice was a clear precursor to the unchained wail that would make Joplin a rock and roll legend. That is the definition of historical significance. Her sound and her spirit are a fundamental part of the DNA of country, bluegrass, folk, and even rock and roll. In the end, the story of Cousin Emmy is a grand and poignant paradox. She was a radio superstar who is now largely unknown to the general public. She was a fiercely independent woman who played the part of a simple country cousin. She was a preserver of ancient traditions who was also a brilliant and forward-thinking innovator. Her life was a balancing act performed on the high wire of the American entertainment industry without a safety net. She passed away on April 11, 1980, having lived a life of incredible highs and frustrating lows. What we can learn from her is a lesson in resilience. She faced poverty, sexism, and exploitation, and she met it all with a grin, a wink, and a furious flurry of banjo notes. She reminds us that our cultural history is not just written by the names everyone knows, but by the determined, often overlooked individuals who did the work, preserved the songs, and entertained the people. Cousin Emmy wasn't just a musician, she was a keeper of the flame, a human archive of America's beautiful and strange folk soul. Her legacy isn't found on the pop charts or in a long list of awards. It's found in the sharp, joyful twang of a banjo, in the enduring power of a simple folk song, and in the spirit of every performer who dares to be loud, authentic, and unapologetically themselves. She was a volcano of a woman, and her music is the rich, vibrant landscape she left behind for us to explore.